Hello, I'm Elizabeth, and today I'm going to talk about a topic I think is quite controversial. It has become a little political, and that is the divide between the wealthiest 1% and the rest of the population. So, this is about taxing the wealthy. And so for the past several years, there has been this large debate on whether or not we should tax the rich. And this is because the wealthiest 1% of the American population owns about 35% of the entirety of the country's wealth, which 99% of the population is left with 65%, which is a much smaller amount if you distribute that equally. It has much of society upset that they aren't taxed more given this large disparity in income. And there are counter arguments, mostly from people who identify as Republican, not just singling them out. This just seems to be the majority of it. And they wonder, why would they be given different treatment? It seems unfair. And my big thing is there are many loopholes in the United States, and they're a constant thing. And I think the wealthiest may have taken these advantages too far. And so the question that I will be addressing is the one at large, which is what is fair, what is unfair? And so first I'd like to start off with what they argue. So their first argument is that this will increase the competitive or decrease the competitive advantage with other countries because more taxes on the rich, on businesses, corporations would set them at a large disadvantage to other countries' establishments. Basically, it makes them look bad financially and just as a whole in general. And one of the biggest arguments is that if you tax the rich more, they will earn less revenue. And because of this, they'll be less likely to invest in expanding their businesses, corporations, or creating as many products for consumers. And because of this, they may also budget differently to accommodate for this change in income. And this would lead to a loss of jobs, which conclusively would not wreck, but definitely mess up the economy by providing less people with less income. However, one would imagine that because of their high amount of funds, this wouldn't be as much of an issue. Some people may be cut, which obviously is unhelpful, not necessarily the best, but perhaps taxing the rich will help the country's economy more and allow for more employment opportunities throughout that. It also depends on what each consumer's money is being spent on. So referring directly to the wealthy, it's a question of what they're doing with it. So say, for example, they go to McDonald's every day, 3 times a day for every meal. So they're investing a lot of money in McDonald's. So McDonald's is financially thriving because of this. And say that multiple billionaires are doing this. It does not necessarily mean that McDonald's is going to raise the minimum wage for their workers. Thus, it helps the corporation, makes this disparity between the wealthiest and the poor even larger. And then there's also, you need to take into consideration that there's hoarding the money, in which case the economy is not being helped at all whatsoever by the wealthy, and thus I would argue taxing them a bit more based on their income, and so more than an average household would make, would not harm them that much, right? It wouldn't hurt their lifestyle. And another argument that is made is that it will be a financial burden on this 1% of the population. Would it be fair to impose larger taxes on this group? Just in general, it seems a little immoral. But you can argue that the tax rates for the rich are very unfair because they seem to invest more than they do work. And when you make investments, federal taxes are lower. So they don't have to pay as much as the average American would have to. So the majority of Americans do pay all these larger federal taxes and stimulate the economy more, even though they have less income. And according to an article I read by Americans for Tax Fairness, loopholes like these see about $1.3 trillion lost over the span of 10 years. So you can just imagine where instead that $1.3 trillion could go. And this is just through loopholes. This does not necessarily mean that they tax the rich more. It's just loopholes that the wealthy use to get away from these taxes. And if you just imagine how that could like stimulate the economy and help so many others out. And an argument for taxing the rich is the fact that unions are decreasing, and this can be seen as negative for the economy as they are in place to help the workers, especially with reducing wage inequality. And WACE, I think is how you say their name, they say that where unions exist, they can help increase wages among non-union employees because employers pay higher wages to prevent workers from unionizing. So the fact that unions are disappearing is not looking good for our economy as a whole. So overall, taxing the rich is ultimately, I think, the right thing to do in our economy, even with the few downsides it does impose. Although jobs may be lost, in the long run, I think it would be fair. Most of the population makes only a small portion of the entire income made in the country. And this should trend in the opposite direction, with more tax from the rich, and consequently, a better distribution of taxes among the economic classes. So more should go to the middle class and the lower class, because the upper class, they are set. They have more than they need to live. And as a business major, I do understand how it could potentially destroy large corporations if they're unprepared, but it also could lead to new morals and techniques, and this could better the atmosphere of the companies as a whole. Thank you.